Not a sponsor. Hey there viewers, and welcome back. Today we're going to do an oil change on this Olds 98. So pretty simple DIY job. That's kind of the idea here. So let's take a look at the tools that we need. One word of the wise, this is an older car, so we will need to perform a chassis lube on it. So we'll need a grease gun and grease and a couple rags, things like that. Let's get started. So taking a look at our tool cart here, we have the appropriate quantity of motor oil, in this case 5 quarts. Check your service information. We're using Quaker State, not a sponsor of the show. We're using a Napa Gold 1040 filter, also not a sponsor of the show. We're using some, I believe it's Valvoline chassis grease, not a sponsor, and some basic hand tools, and of course lift, which you can use ramps or a jack. Just observe your proper lifting procedures for those. All right, so we're under the car. We're going to use a 14. This is obviously the oil pan here because this is the engine and that's the transmission. So it's important to know which one we're going to drain. We're going to make sure our ratchet is going lefty-loosey. And now that I broke the drain plug loose, we're going to put the oil catch pan underneath. We want to make sure that we can slide the dolly this way, back and forth, such that we can move it when we miss. So we'll pull the drain plug out, hot oil, be caution. Alright, while this is draining, when it kind of throttles down, we'll want to pull the pan back because it kind of crawls up the bottom of the oil pan. We're going to go ahead and complete a chassis lube on this next because this is an older car and we need to grease the ball joints. What you're looking for are these little guys right here, and they're called grease zerks, so I always wipe them off. You'll probably have 4-ish, or 3 rather, excuse me, on these cars. It just depends how it's set up, but you'll have one up here on the steering, one down here, and then depending if you have an upper control arm or not, you may have an extra. So all we're going to do, basically, if it moves, if it has a Zerk fitting on it, grease it. All right, so like I said earlier, this car's only got 2 grease Zerks per side. I think some of the trucks, see how I just pressed that on there and it kind of grabs? I think some of the trucks got like 12 or 13. So I give it 2 pumps of grease. You should see the little boot in here swell up. 2 pumps is generally all that you need for that. So make sure it's not just squeezing out along the side or something silly like that. So sorry if I'm kind of in your way. This isn't the easiest spot to film. There's 2 pumps in that, and wipe it off. We'll repeat the exact same thing for the other side. Sometimes they're a little covered with dirt. That is why we grease these. Pardon my big head. 2 pumps, and 2. Should always see that boot expand a little bit. We'll get the steering. It's obviously up here on this side. There is no inner tie rod to grease. Like I said, the trucks and SUVs typically have a whole lot more spots to grease. The newer cars really don't have any spots to grease at all. So yeah, we do replace some ball joints on those, but these are all original, 30 years old, so must be something to having to grease them every time. We're in the back of the car. Most cars don't have anything to grease in the back. This one does. Hopefully you can see that boot here expand a little bit. Let's take a look back up here in the front. So everything's pretty much finished dripping. We're just gonna wipe this up. We'll wipe up our bolt and our washer. Looks like we can probably reuse that. Everything's nice and clean. Everything looked in good shape. If in doubt, just replace that little copper washer. I've got a couple of them in stock, or pick one up. While you are buying your oil filter, should go to the parts store anyway, we are going to torque that. Factory spec. It doesn't have to be super tight, but not so loose that it wants to fall out or anything like that. Next up, let's pull the oil filter. So you can see the oil filter there. And we have a cup wrench here that fits pretty nice. I'm going to put the cup wrench on the filter, and then hopefully maybe this extension kind of reaches up. It's a little bit tight. And then we're going to lefty-loosey until we can control the filter by hand. And then we'll go ahead and put the drain dolly underneath the filter. We'll let her rip. We'll wipe the car off while we're at it so it doesn't drip on the customer's driveway. Since GM put the oil filter literally right above this cross member. Very thoughtful of them. Now that the oil filter is removed, we really need to wipe off this shiny little machined surface up here. That way our new O-ring, or flat washer, whatever you want to call it, on our new filter can seal without having a bunch of dirt getting in it. So just make sure it's nice and clean. Also, do yourself a favor and make sure the gasket, the old rubber O-ring or flat washer, whatever you want to call it, did not stick to the engine block. There shouldn't be any rubber stuck to the engine. Next step, I'm going to test this replacement filter. Let's make sure it threads on good. I have used this particular style and brand before, so everything's good. You can see how snugly the threads fit and that the outer case diameter, it may be a different size, but essentially what we're looking for is that the O-ring is able to seat on this shiny little surface. So considering I've used this filter before on this car, just not this time, I'm not super concerned about it. All right, next up, what we're gonna do is, because we can, we are going to fill this replacement filter with oil. That way the engine oil pump doesn't have to fill it once you start it. It's good precaution. If the filter fits sideways like on the Hondas and some of the Fords, it's probably a bad idea to try to fill it with oil before you put it on the car. So we're also going to put a little bit of lubrication on that O-ring so it slides up there real nice and easy for us. Next, we're going to thread this guy up just until it touches the engine block. So we're not going to tighten it at all. And then from there, we're going to tighten probably 1/2 to 3/4 of a turn. We don't need to get overly Western with it. We do need to get our wrench up there. I suppose, actually, we could lose the extension. Why do I use a flex head ratchet? Oh, because we can. So if it's a little more, it's a little more. You can kind of get an idea of, I'm not really forcing that filter. So just where it starts to kind of get snug, and don't go all hog wild on the thing, because you'll never get it off next time. All right, using a clean funnel so we don't spill oil all over the customer's engine. We're gonna slowly, probably shouldn't go for the long pour on this. These bottles are shaped this way. Just a little tech tip Friday on some other day, on Sunday. Bottles are shaped like this so you can tip them more while you pour. Hey, that kind of rhymes. So now that that's out of the way, we're just gonna lose this funnel really quick. Set it over there. I put most of my capacity into this engine, so I'm just going to check it. Hopefully we are at the full mark. And I'm filled up about 3/4 of the way, so I'm just gonna toss this cap in, fire the motor up, and see if anything's leaking. All right, so once you're in the car, whoa, we gotta turn our light down. There we go. All right, once you're in the car, I'll give you one-handed here, sorry. You wanna check, turn this off, over here for your oil pressure light. Here, once you start the engine, you want that to shut off within probably about 2 seconds. And it did. So your next job is to look under the car with the engine running to see if it's puking oil anywhere. Alright, so now that that's out of the way, no oil leaks, anything like that, we can recheck our oil level. I'll set the car down on the ground so it's perfectly flat. We'll recheck the oil level and top anything off that we need. We'll write the mileage down, wipe up any tech tracks that we left behind on the car, and we're done. Alright, looks like we got about 3 holes left, so I should be able to put my extra half a quart in. Well, there you got it, folks. That is an oil change and chassis lube on your Olds 98. So pretty much the same for every car that uses the spin-on type of oil filter. Some are just the pleated cartridge, and that's usually done on the top of the engine. Some have the cartridge filter on top of the engine and all of that other stuff. The only one I'm going to say that maybe be a little different are some of the Toyotas. You get this fancy little drain bolt on the housing that holds the spin-on filter. Don't even mess with it. Just unscrew it like a normal filter, let it spill, save yourself the frustration. So, hey, hopefully you learned something. Do your thing in the box down below. Maybe share your experiences, maybe how much oil you've spilled on the floor perhaps. This job we did very, very little spillage on the floor. And as always, thanks for watching.